Joining me now, someone who spent decades on the front line of the fight to preserve Medicaid, along with other government programs, Senator Bernie Sanders, independent of Vermont. Let's start with the characterization there. I thought that was succinct. He calls them cuts. I call them savings. The line that they're giving about these big cuts to Medicaid is that there are work requirements, that there's too many able-bodied people laying around getting free health care. We believe welfare dependency, not work, is the barrier. That's an op-ed from Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Mehmet Oz. What do you say to that?
It's nonsense. The overwhelming, we're going to be looking at $715 billion in cuts to Medicaid and to the Affordable Care Act. That means, Chris, that according to the CBO, over 13 million Americans are going to lose their health insurance. And then on top of that, what the Republicans are proposing is a $35 copayment for many Medicaid recipients.
Right.
If you are making $16,000 a year, you know what? You can't afford that $35. You are not going to go to the doctor. One of the outrageous dysfunctionalities of our current healthcare system is we lose some 70,000 people a year die because they don't get to a doctor on time. When you throw 13 million people off of health insurance, when you raise co-payments for poor people, it is a death sentence. Thousands and thousands of low-income and working people will die because they simply will not be able to get into a doctor's office when they need it.
One of the interesting dynamics to me, having covered government health care and these fights for a while, is the kind of recipe Republicans tend to use in these budget fights goes the following. Look, they're taxing you to pay for something for these other people, right? Yeah. And we're going to cut your taxes, and these freeloaders aren't going to be able to take advantage of the system. Right. It's interesting to me how Medicaid has moved from a thing that they could make that argument about easily back when I first started covering politics to something that feels politically a lot more like Medicare. It's something that's people understand how used and necessary it is. Does it feel that way to you, that it has more political power?
I think that's a very, very valid point, and I think that has a lot to do with a couple of factors. Number one, the healthcare crisis is absolutely acute. You have millions and millions of people who even have health insurance, can't find a doctor, can't afford their deductibles to pay when their deductible is high. So you have a crisis right now in Medicaid, which covers some 70 million people, is a lifesaver for those people. Number two, Medicaid provides about 60% of the funding for nursing homes. So you have a mom or a dad in a nursing home where you need to put them in a nursing home, that's Medicaid. And thirdly, Medicaid provides substantial amounts of money for community health centers. 30 million people go to community health centers. Right. You need that primary health care. Medicaid is there. So Medicaid is playing a role like Medicare in providing care to millions of people. The average American does not want to see it cut.
So you've got, Josh Hawley saying don't cut Medicaid, although it looks like they're going to give themselves wiggle room, right? They're going to define them as things that aren't cuts. And then I want to play you something. Ron Johnson, Republican colleague in Wisconsin, he's been saying this thing's doomed to fail. It's not going to get enough support in the Senate. I'm not quite sure what he's at. He seems to be thinking they're not cutting things enough. But I want to play this for you and get your read on how much this is a bluff and how much this is real. Here's what he had to say.
He only has so much time. But again, I don't want to undermine his strategy because unlike others who are hoping he fails, I hope he succeeds. I hope he succeeds spectacularly. I hope all my concerns are alleviated. But again, so that's why my primary focus is spending. But we can focus on the thing we can do, which is we need to reduce spending to a reasonable pre-pandemic level, and we're not doing that.
Johnson said basically, we're not cutting enough spending. I'm not going to vote for this. Right. I've got a bunch of other Republicans who won't. I tend to think that's talk is cheap, but what do you think about what's going on here?
I think you're right. At the end of the day, Trump's pressure on them and Musk's money on them. If they don't support it, they're going to get primaried, and Musk has unlimited amounts of money to spend against them. I think that will likely prevail. But the idea that at a time of massive income and wealth inequality, in a bill which we're going to provide $660 billion in tax breaks for the top 1%. The idea that we're not cutting programs for working people and poor people is absolutely asinine.
You have been on this tour. You've been talking about this a lot with Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and others, the Fight Oligarchy Tour. You've put out, crazy numbers of people.
Right.
Over 10,000 in Denver and folks in...
No, 34,000 in Denver, as a matter of fact.
Sorry. Thanks for the correction. I was just pulling that from back there, but 34,000 in Denver. Huge numbers of people. What is it? Have you been surprised by those numbers? And what does it say to you?
Well, look, remember, this is not some kind of presidential campaign.
No.
There is no election, not running for anything. People are coming out in huge numbers because they are deeply concerned and frightened about what's happening in this country, and they want to see Democrats stand up and fight back in a very aggressive way. So, number one, they're worried about the growing authoritarianism of the Trump administration. They're worried about the kleptocracy of the Trump administration. And they're worried about what we just talked about, massive tax breaks for billionaires, while 60% of our people living paycheck to paycheck and ordinary Americans struggling just to put food on the table. So the American people look at all of this and they say, what the hell is going on? We want a government that represents not just the billionaire class and the oligarchs. We want a government that represents all of us. Let's do it.